This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London.
Very happy to have you all here again for our, for those who have not, well, you've been here once.
Yeah.
You've been once. You guys have been here more often. Yeah. Well, you were here last year and the year before, yeah?
Oh, no, year before.
No, last year, yeah, and you. So, this seminar has been going on since 2008, and the idea is to talk about German philosophy, but in a very wide sense. And most of it, because I'm the one who sort of convenes it, has been through the lens of Blochian ideas, having to do with the world as a hopeful movement towards a state of finality or towards identity or utopia or whatever. And so that will also be part of the discussions that we're going to have hopefully in the series this year. But that's not, a rigid framework or anything. I haven't chosen any block text to really look at now. We will maybe use some of the readings if we want to. But I have chosen to take it a little bit out of the German context per se. We're talking about German poets, talking about the relation between poetry and philosophy, but we're also talking about East and West. And that is of course itself a theme within the history of German thought. Leibniz in the 18th century starts to become aware under the influence of Jesuit travels to China and the first translations, also the first translations of the Vedas that were made in that time, but also of Chinese philosophical texts. Confucius was translated. So Leibniz is one of the first major thinkers in the German tradition who becomes aware of the fact that there is philosophy in other cultures as well. And a discussion starts gradually, slowly, of which in which Hegel plays a certain role in his history of philosophy. He talks about Chinese philosophy. And Schopenhauer, of course, is one of the first major readers of Asian thought, in the sense that he sees an almost identity between his own philosophy and the basic philosophy of Buddhism. And in Nietzsche you find things like that. And then all throughout German philosophy you get this interest also in what is Oriental. There's a whole discussion on colonialism and colonial theory and Orientalism, a kind of fascination with the Orient, a kind of fantasy about what it is, which is also very present in Goethe. Goethe writing the famous Westöstlicher Divan, the West Eastern Divan. I chose the title for our seminar, The West Eastern Couch, instead of the divan, because I wanted to highlight the fact that we're going to do a bit of probing into what goes on this sofa, on this divan. But that, for Goethe, that was a discussion or a confrontation with Sufi mysticism. So that was more the Arabic Islamic side of the Orient. For Bloch, the Orient is also very important. Ex Oriente lux, the light comes out of the East, which for him, which is an old saying in Christian thought, but for him also comes to mean, of course, the communist revolution, which also comes from the East. So there is the Russian Revolution comes from the East, and Brecht in his Der gute Mensch von Sichuan, the good soul of Sichuan, starts by saying that the lands in which this play is set, which is China, part of China, were before, just as the rest of the world, under the grip of oppression and domination, but they have now since been released from that, and that is shortly after the communist revolution in China. Of course, not much came of that, or certainly not in the way that Brecht thought it would. But the point is that there is a kind of imagery about the East. Last year, when we read the materialism texts and looked at materialism in the history of German thought, we also found this notion of the dawn, the morning. Nietzsche's book Morgenröte, the morning dawn, and also Böhme's book, the Aurora, the morning light. That's also the light that comes from the East. So it is the new. Yeah, there's a whole discussion that we can have about the relation between East and West from this point of view of cultural theory, and that plays a background in what we're going to talk about. So what I want to do today is, well, if maybe we could just all quickly introduce ourselves and say a little bit why we're interested in this theme. And then I want to just do some housekeeping things about the texts that we're going to use and things like that. I want to give a bit of an introduction to the theme, the way I see it. And then we're not going to look today, I think, at any of the major texts that we'll be occupied with, but I want to use a few fragments that I've chosen, and also a poem by Hölderlin on Empedocles to get us into the discussion. I very much hope that we can do it really as an informal, interactive group, rather than me talking all the time, but today I will spend maybe half an hour or so setting the scene a little bit. So, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I'm Sam Dolban, doing a PhD at Birkbeck on Benjamin Bloch, just going into my second year. Yeah, my interest in this, I suppose, comes down to the climate in the 20s in relation to Brecht, and as you were saying, this relation to China's notions of communism, or how he saw that to be. Also, Hölderlin's legacy, I think, is interesting in the 20th century.
That's fine. Yeah.
I'm Jeremy Coleman. I'm going into my fourth year of a PhD at King's College London, but I've just moved to Cambridge last month to write up and do a bit more teaching there. And I'm doing a PhD on Wagner in Paris and ideas of translation between the two, and how that squares with his own German national identity. And I went to the Wagner series a few years ago, and so I suppose I'm also interested more broadly in German thought and the history of German thought, as well as radical philosophy and dialectical thought too, in whatever form that.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Please grab a chair.
Thank you.
Join us.
Thanks.
I asked for a different setup of the room, where we wouldn't be like this, and so we decided to go around the table.
You can call me Jingwen, and I'm doing a first year master with Carol Fisser in University of Bristol. Topic is future cities, and these have some relation with usual thinking. And I grew up in communist China, well, it's still communist China, and at times Marxist is the only philosophy taught in school, middle school. But I was quite rebel at that time. I started with Plato in philosophy myself. Passing examination, but self-taught philosophy. And undergraduate times, I was studying law actually, but I was reading vast philosophy in libraries, and I like Foucault at that time, French philosopher, and influenced me at that time. Then did my master in Bristol. Then I said goodbye to the French philosophy and turned to German. And yes, Mr. Bloch is Carrie introduced to me and attracted me because I'm Buddhist and I have religion background. I always think religion don't play a role in modern life, modernity, sort of things. And on one side, nerd philosophy, another side, practice religion. So both of them. Bloch gave them the word actually. So when I discovered Bloch, I was wow at the moment.
That's wonderful.
Yes, yeah. And Tao Te Ching, one of my favorite one. I'm not allowed to express I like Tao Te Ching when in middle school because the teacher don't like it. They like confuse them. They like you to be displayed, you know. So I was quite liberated. Till the most time I can express it, I really like it because you're all adults, nobody limits you. And I then find interest between Tao Te Ching, Taoism, and art, you know, Merleau-Ponty, you know, the implicit, explicitity, action, action. It's very beautiful, and so continue to study.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Thanks.
My name is Graham Hill. I studied German literature a very long time ago as part of a modern language degree. More recently I did an MA in philosophy. I'm not studying sort of formally now, but I've come along to the seminar for the last few years and really enjoyed them as part of my sort of general education, I guess.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah.
Hi, I'm John. I'm doing a PhD at Sussex, which is kind of about processes of racialisation, particularly how we can theorise them within kind of German critical theory. And I suppose this particular thing was, I really like Brecht, and I think it's good, you know, it's an excellent resource for German critical theory, which is underused, and this seems like a really interesting way to talk about Brecht.
Good. Okay. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, yes, my name is Simon. I'm a member of the Advanced Institute of German Studies, whatever it's called now. I read German at Oxford, and recently I've been doing Chinese art at SOAS, and also a Chinese course at LSE. I'm particularly interested in Lao-Tzu, but also German literature. And can't say any much about Empedocles, but I'm very pleased to learn. So it's out of, if that's okay, out of general interest.
Yeah, wonderful.
Very interesting.
Very welcome. Yeah.
These seminars.
Good. Okay.
I'm Phil. I live in Oxford. I tend to think that the Greek tradition and the German idealist tradition gives us most of what we need, but I'm still bothered. I'm still bothered by you. Well, I mean, I was attracted to this meeting because of the idea of discussing both Western and Eastern philosophy.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm looking hopefully for somebody to explain to me what Eastern philosophy can give the Western tradition.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great. Well, so yeah, I'm Johan Siebers, and so I've been convening, like I said, I've been convening these seminars for several years now, looking at German thought. I'm a philosopher. I'm not a Germanist, but I've worked for a long time on the history of German thought, especially Ernst Bloch, critical theory, but also German idealism, metaphysics in general, history of metaphysics, and I've always had a real love of the Tao Te Ching, but I'm by no means a comparative philosopher. So, and I don't speak Chinese. I can't read it in Chinese. But I've always been, from the first time I read it when I was 15, I was sort of struck by it, and I thought, this is it. Yeah, there is something deeply important here.
Did you read it in Dutch?
Yeah, I read it in a Dutch translation. Yeah, made by an engineer whose name was Bloch.
Really?
Yes, it makes sense because it's inspired the computer science.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I have compared a lot of translations, but I'm by no means an expert on it. I'm no means an expert on Chinese or Asian thought in any way. But that's also not the point. The point is to hopefully have a joint journey of discovery in which we can each for ourselves discover some interesting and fascinating things, and to also collectively maybe further our understanding of, as we said in the beginning, this connection between East and West, but also between metaphysical thinking and critical theory, and also between we'll see how far we go into that, between communism and Taoism. There is, in the 20s in Germany, there is a very strong connection between the German translation of Tao Te Ching by Richard Wilhelm and Marxism of that time, not just in Brecht, but also in Benjamin and also in Bloch. There is, we've read it, I think, in this seminar several years ago. We looked at Hegel, Johann Peter Hegel, the German author from the end of the 19th century, who writes folk tales, tales of peasant life, that were very important for Benjamin and for Bloch. And Bloch writes what I said about Hegel, in which he uses the concept of Tao to express the feeling of life that is involved in these stories that Hegel tells, which are utopian renditions of peasant life in a way. And Brecht, of course, says about communism, it is the simple thing that is so difficult to do. Das Einfache, das so schwierig ist, oder das so schwer zu machen ist. And that idea of the simple not being so simple, that's a very Taoist idea, isn't it? Yeah. And so we'll see a little bit of that hopefully when we start to look at this text. Now I want to, another theme that we will cover is that between poetry and philosophy. And that's also something that for me has become very important. I've written a few articles which I will make available to you about what you cannot say, about silence, about something that's inexpressible within philosophical thought or philosophical experience. And that's of course a common theme that runs through many philosophies that we know, maybe in the 20th century most notably Wittgenstein, who says that of which you cannot speak, you have to be silent. We should not be silent about that, which you cannot speak. And that seems to me also, related to this idea, as Wittgenstein himself says somewhere, that real philosophy can only be, you can only write poetry about it, he says somewhere. You can only, you can also, in German the verb would be dichten, you can only dichten philosophy, you can only poetize philosophy. Yeah? And that's a strange idea at first sight, because philosophy is so much about rational argumentation. How comes it that there is something there that escapes rational argumentation, and you might even say, if you don't acknowledge it, then your rational argumentation ceases to be philosophically interesting or relevant. In German idealism, Phil, I think you would agree with this, the way this dichotomy comes back is in the notion of a speculative rationality, which is somehow, to say it in German, überbegrifflich, is super conceptual, and manages to express a union of opposites, as Hegel would say, that cannot be expressed in straight conceptual language. But German idealism is very much a philosophy of the hope or the desire for a kind of seamless relation between rationality and this non-conceptual level of truth. That is also how it appears in Adorno, in the negative dialectic, where we looked at this several times, where Adorno clearly says philosophy is the attempt to say the non-conceptual in a conceptual way. And you can understand even from that simple formulation that such an endeavor must always be a negative dialectic, because you're looking for the point where you try and you fail, and then you try again and you fail better. So I think there are these deep connections between even the project of critical theory and these kinds of metaphysical insights. Although critical theory itself didn't want to have much to do with metaphysics, it seems to me that we have to ask these questions if we have to understand what a critical theory could be today, and what this project of a negative dialectic might mean today. What it might mean today to realize that there is a sense in which philosophy is the practice of remaining silent about certain things, but that doesn't mean not talking about them. That means keeping silence, which is very different from either solving everything in a kind of analytical scientific discourse, a reification of the mind, and on the other hand, forgetting about something. So saying something by being silent about it, that seems to be the question here. And that's what we're interested in. And so what I thought, listen, so is it okay if I talk for a little bit more? Yeah. So what I thought was, if for those who were here last year, we looked at the notion of dialectical materialism. So what does matter mean in the history of German thought, and how do we get to a point where we have a dialectical materialism? And I can't say that we drew one specific conclusion, but maybe one thing that came out of it was that matter, right from the start in German thought at the end of the Middle Ages, does not so much mean the inert stuff or the material of the world, but that matter is a subjective drive. Its existence in its aspect of always being ahead of itself in a way, or it is this moment within the world in which there is a rupture, which becomes in contemporary theory, Zizek for example, becomes the notion of subjectivity. Subject as the rupture in the world, the lack in things. That this drive is that is how the concept of matter functions. And then you can start to think about what a dialectic of that drive would be. Yeah? And so I wanted to build somehow on that starting point and say, so how do we move on from there? What does it mean to think about that? And then, well, I had in the summer I thought a lot about this and also related it to my own training in philosophy, going back a long time, to the teachers that I had, one of whom is a great Socratic thinker, a Dutch philosopher who's completely unknown outside of the borders of the Netherlands because he never writes anything, but he is a great teacher. And I had conversations with him in the summer, and we talked about dialectics, and we talked about what dialectical thinking really comes down to in its core. And so we came up with 3 principles that determine the nature of dialectical thinking. And so I want to, really what I want to do is address this question of thinking, and so philosophy and poetry, in on the one hand the figure of Hölderlin writing about Empedocles, and on the other hand Brecht writing about Lao-Tzu. I want to approach that from this perspective of what dialectical thinking is. And so I'll just write it down up there, okay? Because we're going to come back to these. Yeah, just 5 minutes. So the topic of this seminar is how these thinkers, Empedocles on the one hand, we'll read everything that he has, that we can find about Empedocles, and also I would say that in these legends, they are not meaningless. These fables are not meaningless, right? And they are about vanishing. Right? So that's the first thing to notice. Empedocles, the first big vanishing act in the history of philosophy. He did dancing on the volcano. On the volcano was one thing. He jumps into it, yeah, and he disappears. And Lao-Tzu, of course, same thing. He doesn't jump into the volcano, but he disappears into the mountains, into a mountain range. He disappears behind the. And both leave something behind. Empedocles leaves a sandal behind. Yeah, there's a sandal found, and Lao-Tzu leaves the Tao Te Ching behind. Yeah, the 5,000 characters. Yeah. So what happens, and why is that a moment of truth? And for me, it has to do with exile. And why? And we see that immediately coming back in the life stories of the poets that we're looking at. When Hölderlin writes about Empedocles, this is shortly before the onset of his insanity. Seine geistige Umnachtung. He became, how do you say that in nice English? Geistige Umnachtung. his mental
Darkening or something.
Darkening,
Darkening.
yeah.
Spiritual.
Adumbration or something.
Adumbration, possibly.
And also the mental shadow set in.
The night, really, it sounds strong English word, like benightening or something. Benightenment, you could read.
Benightened, yeah.
Benightenment, I don't know if that's a word.
What happened was that Hölderlin was very unstable person mentally, and he became insane, and lived for the last 30 or 40 years of his life, really for an extremely long time, in a tower in Tübingen, right next to the school where he had gone with Hegel and Schelling, and he was there in the care of a carpenter or some sort of craftsman who was very well read, and he read Kant, he read Hegel, and he knew about Hölderlin and took him into his care. And Hölderlin lived there for 30, 40 years, not speaking to anyone, going out once or twice a day, but only in the garden to walk around and then back up. So he was really withdrawn from the world. He lived a life. His poetry became increasingly insane. We'll look at all of that. And I want to interpret this life of Hölderlin and look at his poetry from the point of view of his being a kind of exile. A kind of exile. A funny fact is that he was given, he didn't know about this, but he was given an inheritance shortly after this happened, and it just stayed in the bank, accruing interest. He didn't know about it, he thought he didn't have a penny. And then when he died, it turned out that he was a rich man. But I don't know if it would have made a difference. So Hölderlin writes about Empedocles in a position of this looming exile from the world. And I want to look at this from that perspective. And then Brecht is the same thing. Lao-Tzu, Taoism, was a well-known topos in left-wing thought in the Weimar Republic, because people saw Taoism as this return to simplicity, but also as a thinking about an almost anarchic way of thinking that does not want to have to do with state institutions, that believes in a return to natural relations, and so that is in a way critical of the whole superstructure of dominating institutions and ideologies, and they recognize that. So that explains a little bit of the popularity of Taoism in this context. But for Brecht, there is the additional factor. He writes this poem that we will look at in detail in 1938. And he kept a copy of Richard Wilhelm's translation with him throughout his own period of exile. So I think, we'll have to see how far we get there with that, I think that Brecht identified himself with Lao-Tzu, and that he used this identification to keep on writing while he was in exile.
He was in Spain,
He was in Denmark first, and then he went to America, of course, where he was for a very long time, and then after the war he came back to East Germany. But all through that period he had a scroll also with him, a Chinese scroll with a painting of Lao-Tzu on the ox that you will be familiar with. Huh? So I think there is also, from a psychological point of view, there is an identification between Hölderlin and Empedocles and between Brecht and Lao-Tzu along the lines of this theme of exile. Yeah? So that's what I want to start to highlight, how that works. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I'm getting to the direct principles in a minute. Why is exile not just from the point of cultural history an interesting theme, but also from the point of view of philosophy? Well, Novalis, a contemporary of Hölderlin, German idealist, poet, philosopher, says, you know this, philosophy is homesickness. And that is, I think, a really important point. So if philosophy is homesickness, then the condition of exile has got something to do with the philosophical condition. A philosophical, if you know philosophers, they are usually not very much at home in the world, or you don't, you don't do philosophy if there's not something wrong, I think. You don't, would you agree with that or not?
Something missing, right?
Something is missing, exactly.
That's probably not the reason all philosophers do philosophy, because they
Not the ones in
see-
Cambridge, not the ones.
But also this withdrawing is a very Chinese idea, and all the art and things. You go from the court and you go away and you just have to lead a very simple life from that. I
Yeah.
think. So it's not just Lao-Tzu, it's a very Chinese, would you agree, very Chinese cultural thing?
No, not really.
No.
I'm not half of it.
Yeah, but Lao-Tzu, of course, had an enormous influence on Chinese culture.
Yes,
Yeah.
but
No, of course,
all
it's-
through.
no, you can't say that
Ming.
all movements of exile are, or all movements of going away, or withdrawing from the world are philosophical. You can't say that, but the other way around, maybe, yes, maybe there's something. Something. At least that's the point I want to highlight. I want to think about this also what I've called this movement of evacuation. And evacuation is an emptying, which indeed in Plotinus, for example, becomes a major philosophical activity, becomes a spiritual exercise to empty yourself, and I think that's also part in, see it in Buddhism, see it also in Taoism. And to understand this evacuation in relation to this homesickness, this theme of philosophy having to do with an awareness of a separation of maybe us human beings from the totality, or a separation of me from my authentic self, or however you want to think about it, is something that you see very early on in philosophy coming to the fore. Not in the last place, before Plato even, in Empedocles. The way that Hölderlin takes this story initially, because he has much more to say about it, is of Empedocles jumping into the crater of Vietnam, is that Empedocles tries to become one with the world soul. He sees this as his way out of separateness, Abgeschiedenheit. He wants to rejoin the one, the totality.
Matter.
Yeah, so, well, nature, yeah?
It's kind of like the death drive. That's what
Exactly, yes, of course. It is the death drive. It is the death drive, and it is connected to of course, as always, to eros, to yearning. This homesickness is a death drive as much as is thanatos as much as eros. The Dutch writer Gerard Reven says this beautifully. He says eros and thanatos are like two little twin brothers who like to do everything together. Yeah. Horrible, yeah. So of course, then the eros as a component of the philosophical life in Plato is definitely connected to death, to what the soul will go to after death, and also where the soul was before birth. Yeah? So that whole complex of themes plays an enormous role, and we're going to have to see how we think about that. Yeah? And how these poets lead us to think about it. I'll say a bit more about that in a minute. But now my principles of dialectical thinking. So Bloch says somewhere, dialectical thinking means recognizing that no determination is done with itself. That's how he puts it. Nothing is done and dusted, as it were. Noch keine Bestimmung ist mit sich fertig. Noch keine Bestimmung ist mit sich fertig. everything, he says in German very beautifully, jegt sich selbst über die Klinge. I almost heard it bad translating just like that. So that's a stand-up translation. But, so to etwas über die Klinge jagen means for something to run, to sort of go. No. It's like when something is pushed to the point of destruction. No determinism is done with itself, and everything turns into its opposite, and there's a movement like that. Yeah? So that's maybe one thing to bear in mind when we look at these three principles. So there's a principle of reflexivity. And that means you cannot adequately state something. I'm going to write it down. You cannot adequately state something that pretends to be of universal import. You cannot adequately state something that pretends to be of universal import unless you are prepared to equally apply it to yourself. Unless you are prepared to equally apply it to yourself as stating it. So you cannot, principle of reflexivity, you cannot adequately state something that pretends to be of universal import unless you are prepared to equally apply it to yourself as stating it. That will sound familiar to everybody having read any Hegel, or and also it's initially plausible, but it has quite a bit of import. So if we take, let me ask you, if we stick with the proposition, philosophy is homesickness, what does that mean? Well, how does the principle of reflexivity work out there?
Therefore it becomes the searching for home. Homelessness is a desire to return to that which you consider to be home.
But do I know what it is?
No. That's why there's always this lack, I suppose, because you can't define it spatially determined.
Yeah. So can I say, okay, philosophy is homesickness, right? That's it. Yeah. So now we've got it. You can't. I can criticize everybody who thinks that they have got an idea of what their home is, or that they, but I can rest content in my understanding that philosophy is homesickness. If that is really true, that philosophy is homesickness, it must apply to this thought itself as well. So this thought itself must be a form of homesickness.
Unless you don't feel homesickness, what if you don't feel homesickness? Then how can that apply? Philosophy is homesickness.
Okay, but that's right, and it's a really important question, but it's a different question. So, supposing philosophy is homesickness, then how does the principle of reflexivity apply to it? Now, that doesn't address the much more fundamental question, is philosophy homesickness?
Yes, I see. Yeah.
But if it is...
No, you can apply, if you can apply it to yourself, then the principle of reflexivity applies.
It applies, it does apply without any problem,
yes.
But it has implications.
Yeah.
And one of the implications, I think, is that even the determination philosophy is homesickness is itself a kind of homesickness. So there is no resting content with it.
It's a bit sort of...
You cannot say, now I know philosophy is homesickness, so every philosopher that comes along, I will tell you where they are homesick,
Where they find the home.
and that's it. Yeah, yeah, but not even that. Even if I say, okay, so Hegel, that's a kind of homesickness that thinks about itself in terms of absolute spirit, or Kant is a kind of homesickness that projects into the future, or whatever it is. I am not exempt from that, and I have to ask myself, when I look at a philosopher in that light, how does my own homesickness lead me to understand his or her homesickness? So there is a kind, okay, well this sounds, I think when we're going to look at the text, it will become clear that this is an important point. So if I was a Don, then I would write a book and I would say, philosophy is homesickness, and I would explain how this works with all the philosophers. And then I would have failed to apply it to myself. If I apply it to myself, then my relation to these other philosophers changes. At least that's my thought. But the question can be, okay, so what does it mean? It is clear that Empedocles was homesick, or at least the way Hölderlin uses Empedocles is to express a kind of homesickness. And the poem that we'll look at in a minute, we'll see this coming back. It was also clear that in the legend, Lao-Tzu was homesick because he left the state in which he was living because he didn't recognize it anymore, and he didn't want to be there anymore. So he went away. And we can ask the question, so where did he go to? And if it is a philosophical act, if this going away is a philosophical act, it must be an expression of homesickness. How can choosing exile do a form of homesickness? So that's the principle of reflexivity. And then we have the principle of opposition.
Johan, can I ask in how homesickness is translated in German? Because don't you have more than one word for home in German?
Yes, well, in German it is Heimweh. Heimweh, and Heim is home, and Weh is hurt or pain. Heimweh, which is the same as nostalgia, from, what is it in Greek, algos or something, pain, and a home. So I don't know what you mean for
well, what's Heimat?
Oh, Heimat, yeah. So that's also with the word home in it, Heim. Heimat is the place of origin. Right, so Bloch uses this word Heimat all the time. And Heimat differs from Heimweh, that Heimweh is the longing for the Heimat. Heimat in normal colloquial language means the place where you're from. So if you ask a German, where is your Heimat, they will give the town in which they were born, or the area in which they were born. Bloch uses it, of course, in a much more ontologically elevated sense, as the home where we never were, as the home that is in the future. Yeah? The Heimat where we yet have to arrive. But this word Heim is in it, and with Freud, so maybe we'll get around to doing that, we can look at Heimlich and Unheimlich. Yeah? Heimlich is secretive, but Heimlich also, if you translate it literally, would be homely. It's secretive and homely at the same time. What is that which is like home? Unheimlich is that which is not like home, unhomely, which in English is uncanny. And Freud writes about how the home can harbor an experience of uncanniness, in which the home becomes a strange place. And that becoming a strange place of the home is, of course, very closely related to Heimweh, to this you're being estranged from your home, and that can, even as you are at home, can generate a desire for a home that is not yet there. can generate a desire can generate philosophy as an eros, as a longing. You know?
It's funny when you ask German teachers what Heimlich means, they always talk about the forest.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
almost like
in the German imagination, it's a forest where the wolf hangs out, and yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if you've ever been in the Black Forest or tried to walk from one village to the other, and it's a bit dark, then you really experience it. Yeah. So yeah, there's a whole connection of meanings there that are important. Yeah? So, principle of opposition, you cannot understand whatever it is in isolation, i.e. without taking into account the way it is related to what it is not. You cannot understand whatever it is in isolation, i.e. without taking into account the way it is related to what it is not. And this is actually what Hegel calls the definite negation. Again, philosophy is homesickness. What is the not of that? So what do we have to understand if we want to understand philosophy as homesickness?
some kind of universal contentment.
Some kind of, yeah, exactly. So a complete being at home. And I think on the other side, I think there are actually two definite negations here. On the other hand, also a total dislocation. Yeah? The total absence of this category of home at all.
Yes.
In the situation of exile, you get both of these, I think, in a way.
Abhanden in German.
Abhanden, yeah,
Abhanden.
exactly. Well, when it has become, when it's the völlig abhanden gekommen.
It's just out of it.
Yeah, out of it. Yeah.
And again, that's a very sort of poetic idea, isn't it? In music
There's a
and poetry and art.
Mahler.
Mahler, yes.
Ich bin der Welt.
Ich bin der Welt abhanden gekommen. Yeah, exactly.
Lost.
Which is very powerful, actually.
Ich bin der Welt abhanden. It's beautiful, yeah. That's great. Yeah, we must look at that. Yeah.
Which actually is a Ruckert poem.
Yeah, that's
Ruckert,
right.
yes.
Yeah.
It's the last of his Ruckert Lieder, I think.
Ruckert Lieder, yeah.
Okay.
They're good. Not as good as the Kindertoten.
Well, the Kindertotenlieder, of course, have also have everything to do with abhanden gekommen. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's great. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, and there was also, you mentioned, what was his name again?
Oh, Hans Werner Henze's setting of Brecht's poem,
Yeah.
which sets the full text.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we must definitely look at that.
Yeah,
And
is it good? Is it good?
yeah.
It's all right. I don't know that well. I know some of the other songs in the song collection are better known, but there are about 20 songs in the
Yeah, it's a
collection.
wonderful collection because
Yeah.
the poems also really relate to each other in that setting.
And in fact, it's not pushing it too far at all to say that the whole setting is actually about exile, because Henze himself was in exile, and that really generated a lot of his best works.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of reconciling himself to the German tradition in the post-war period, and it's not a coincidence that he sets not only 3 or 4 Brecht poems, but also Heinrich Heine's
I think it's Home Day.
Yeah.
One of his poems. So there's something, but he also sets poems in Spanish and Italian as well, and so it's a very, sort of polyglottic set as well, and so it has an international feel.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's
there's
good.
something going on.
That's also in our little setup, isn't it? I mean, there's this multilingual perspective, like Joe already said. It's got something to do with translation even, and understanding translation itself as a process of evacuation, or as Benjamin would have understood it, as reaching the point where what is unsayable, it becomes visible, as it were, by translating something into another language. And that has got to do with. So you might say you can only dichten real philosophy or translate it.
Another terrifying thought.
Yeah. So that's the principle of opposition. And then there is the principle of persecution. And that is, you cannot free yourself from something supposed to be bad you cannot free yourself from something supposed to be bad by way of aversion. So by turning away from it. The more anxiously you try to avoid something, the more persistently it will persecute you. Now, you know this from common living, normal living your life, I suppose. That is, I do. If you say, "God, I really hate this or that," then yeah, you're stuck in your own hatred. Or you have identified something as that's something I don't want to have anything to do with. Moralism is always of this nature, right? So, and then it just comes back to bite you. Yeah. But it also applies in thought. So again, asking the question, philosophy is homesickness. How does the principle of persecution apply to the philosophical life?
I think the more homesick you feel, the worse it gets, and if you dwell, if you get introspective and homesick. Would you say? I don't know.
It gets worse and worse
It gets worse
the
and
more you
worse.
think about it.
Yeah, they always say if you students, when they go to university, should not be phoning home and emailing and that sort of thing. But actually you should get on with life and something else and not dwell on it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, good, yeah. So that means, as if philosophy is homesickness, then the answer is stop doing philosophy.
Stop doing philosophy. Stop thinking.
Stop thinking, yeah. That would be, if that's true, that would be averting.
Averting, yeah.
That would be to say, philosophy is homesickness, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Or, you might say, philosophy is homesickness, I don't want to feel homesick. So I'm going to philosophy to help me get rid of my homesickness.
But it depends whether you conceive the homesickness to be a purely individual angst or part of a universal condition, right? And I guess that Novalis didn't really have in mind this personal longing, but a longing of the world in itself, like the world, the universal condition. So that's something you can't extricate yourself from in any sense.
No, you can't get rid of it. No, if it is what he meant by it, then it's something we cannot get rid of.
Even the French Revolution didn't bring it about.
And you cannot get rid of it by looking, by preempting a place where you can feel at home. In that sense, the task of the principle of persecution in light of the definition of philosophy would be to stick with the homesickness. And then that would be a little bit, in a way, be the same as the advice given to students. So you don't pretend to be at home by calling up. You allow this homesickness to rage, and then something else might become visible, or something might happen. In philosophy, I think there is an urge. You see it. So my view is that Heidegger is a completely failed philosopher in a big way because of this point, that he could not live with the fact that that the unsayable cannot be said. That he tried to say it once and for all, and even though we would indicate that he didn't, that wasn't what he was doing, but he tried to do it. He tried to give it a place, to box it up.
And Schopenhauer possibly as well. Did you say?
Yeah, Schopenhauer is a very interesting case because there it comes out as this pessimism, this total negativity that surges through his character, and that has its root here. Yeah.
There's more of a drive to Schopenhauer, isn't it, than Heidegger? It's like a movement, a struggle, rather than.
Yeah, they're very different characters, of course, but I do think that is true, that Schopenhauer also could not refrain from giving a final interpretation of it. Yeah. In terms of what he wanted to get away from. Yeah.
Yeah, and can I just ask, I can't read this word here.
Anxiously.
Ah.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you remind me, where are these principles from? These three principles? These are the ones you've discussed.
Yeah.
You've synthesized it to three.
As a way of capturing what remains of the whole dialectical edifice.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
After you've so personally, I don't buy into Hegel's hierarchical ontology of absolute spirit. You will think differently about this, but that's so. If you leave that aside, and if you also leave aside the mirror image of that, which is those aspects of Adorno's negative dialectic that are dogmatic in a way, then you are left with these three general principles of thought. So when you say something, don't not make universal statements, but be willing to apply them to yourself as stating them. Understanding one thing means understanding what it is not, and freeing yourself from something supposed to be bad by way of saying you've got nothing to do with it. And it seems to me that we'll have to see how they fare as we go on. It seems to me that these three have got something to do with dialectics, and they're all principles in which a negation functions. So, principle of reflexivity says don't ignore yourself. The principle of opposition says what something is not is part of what it is. The principle of persecution says you cannot turn away from something in order to get rid of it. You cannot. So they are all, in a way, articulations of the idea of this non-separateness, or of a whole, maybe even a totality. I am part of the universality that I'm stating. I'm not outside of it. That which something is not outside of what it is. and that which I am against is not outside of me. Yeah? So they are, in a way, and that's typical for dialectical thinking, no matter how materialistic you make it, that have to do with overcoming the separateness between the all, the pun, and the one. The hen means one into two meanings, the one as a whole, but also the singular. And this separateness between the totality, the whole, and the one, that separateness is I think, another sort of key trait of all philosophical constellations in European thought. Certainly in German idealism, if you think of Schelling's form of idealism, what is it? It is saying the individual has to separate itself from the totality in order for even the totality to be, and that creates suffering, or that creates evil in Schelling's thought. And we have to find our way back to this totality. Already in Plato you find it. The soul becomes individualized in the body and has to find its way back to this totality that it was part of. Communism, yes, at that level, what is it other than saying the individual has to find, not eliminate itself in the community, but see itself back in it, or establish that relation with it. All movements in which separateness is overcome. Whether that's possible or not, or that's a big question. I'm not saying that I'm not saying it is possible right here, yeah? But I'm saying that when we think about what philosophy is, and when we start by thinking about it in the sense in which in German idealism it starts out as homesickness, then we get to these sorts of things. Yeah? The emotions that belong to the separateness, the emotion is anxiety. The emotion that belongs to the individual, that which is separate from the whole, is anxiety. You can see this in yourself. When I think of myself as just this person, I get anxious. That is not enough for me. That I'll die. That I won't have enough to eat. I won't have enough power or money or whatever it is. Yeah? I become anxious in a world that otherwise is a world of abundance. It's not that there isn't enough. Yeah? There is, but I feel for myself there's not enough to go around. When I learn to see myself in my relation to the whole, then I overcome this feeling of anxiety, and something else can take its place. Which
by the refugees. By the refugees. Oh, it's like Buddhists talk about non-self.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like non-self.
It's like the non-self. Yeah.
Non-self is one, then you try to practice non-self, then to the all, and you get anxiety, all other feelings, maybe more than anxiety. These are all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And when you you're suffering those things, and you get rid of yourself, the non-self things, then Buddha or something, then you find the refugees. You escape, exile. You find refugees in that whole.
Yeah, exactly. You come home in a world where you would maybe have been, as Plato would say, before you were born or before you were incarnated, and then you come back to it. Yeah, that's right, exactly that. And what is the emotion that is opposed to this anxiety, which is related to desire as suffering, exactly in the Buddhist way? It's the same with the Schopenhauer. It's not so much the first noble truth of the Buddha. There is suffering. Is not to say everybody's always in pain, but it's this circle of pain and pleasure that never stops. Yeah? And that's the same in Schopenhauer, and that's also actually Schelling is there as well. So this is what then in Buddhism I think is called loving kindness for the soul. Yeah. So I think in Hölderlin, and when we get to Empedocles, we see that this is love. This is what Empedocles talks about when he means love. He says the universe is a constant a constant play of love and strife. Strife is this circle of desire and suffering, and love is this return of the soul, of the self, to the all.
Yeah, can I just ask what the relation between Schelling is?
Yeah, so the way I see it is that Schelling has this idea that individuality arises as this original contingency as an evil act. So individuality, the isolating of the individual entity from the totality, that's Urböse, the original evilness. The original evil. And why is it evil? Because it is a severing of the individual entity from the whole.
The whole is nature.
The whole is nature, there, yeah, exactly, yeah. And so you get this idea that in man, nature opens her eyes and sees herself, but that's an act of separateness, separating, which has to be overcome in a higher unity, as it were. So I think that is there. And there's a yeah.
Yeah, and another question is, in Buddhism, they also talk about oneself and one and all. There's a moment you can get the whole, you can get the whole thing, but it's not continue. Just every once in a while, maybe a second or 10 minutes, something you reach there.
Yeah.
Next minute you disappear.
Yeah, you're back here. Yeah.
Back forth.
That's right. And in the poem that we'll look at in a minute, Hulda then says, writes about Empedocles jumping into Mount Etna in order to achieve that forever. Yeah? And then he says, I would like to follow him, but I can't because love holds me back. Yeah, and that's there it becomes very interesting. What is the love that holds him back? Is it the desire or is it something else? Because Empedocles, and that's one of the key themes in the drama, chooses the Freitod. He kills himself. He commits suicide. Now, if you remember Schopenhauer's essay on suicide, he says. And that's also, by the way, something that in classical philosophy comes back in Plotinus, that he's written an essay on suicide, which is almost the same idea. Committing suicide is an affirmation of the will. It's not a renouncing of the will. So it can never lead to this kind of returning to the all. Yeah. Whether that's true. So the question of suicide, of the existential point of suicide, is right at the heart of all of this. Because if suicide was a solution, then we could very quickly all. Plato says philosophy is learning how to die. And at the end of that, literally. If we had an exam at the end, then we would. So you see, this is these are the principles of dialectic that I wanted to give to you, because I want to use them when we go through our themes. I'm always talking for far too long. And then I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'll shut up and we'll look at some of the poems. Now, if you go to the first thing on your handout, what I've given you there is a quotation from Descartes, who apparently has got nothing to do with what we're talking about, but he does.
Have you got a couple of copies of that?
Yeah, of course.
Could I have another one, because my friend is just about to arrive.
Oh, okay, good. I want to make it clear why I've chosen this thing. So when we talk about materialism, and when from a blocking point of view we want to understand materialism, we come up with this question of a rupture in the world, a lack, something's missing, and this lack, and he describes that in the book on materialism, is being torn asunder of the continuity of being. And that is what he calls the subject. So the subject is not this thing, this essence that sits in our bodies, but it is a moment of negativity. It's a mode of negation, lack, that actually, if you go through the three principles, sets up that whole dialectic, you might say. Yeah? And what I want to try to do is to resist this temptation of saying, oh, the modern subject, we have to get rid of it. And there is certainly in the way Buddhism is received in the West, and also Taoism, there is this idea that Buddhism, Taoism, what it means is you have to get rid of yourself. Yeah? So we have this Western concept of the self, and that's not really working out for us because it leads to war and environmental destruction and everything, and so we have to get rid of it. Yeah? So hey, we see there is this thing called Buddhism, and then there we can learn how to get rid of it. I think that is not applying our dialectical principle of reflexivity well enough. And I think it's important to say that, because I want to try and look at the concept of the self or the soul, as we see it in our texts, as itself the place of this evacuation, of this emptying. And so, when in the Eastern tradition we speak of the non-self, that's a different self than the one that we talk about in Western philosophy. Yeah? But how exactly, I don't know yet. Yeah? And we can see this when we think about the beginning of modern philosophy, Descartes' cogito. So you know Descartes' cogito, Descartes saying, I can doubt everything, but I cannot doubt that when I'm doubting that I exist. And so this is the first thing that I know. And then he has this discourse, which in his philosophy is that there's a distinction between the body and the mind, the res cogitans, which is the mind, the thinking thing, and the res extensa, which is the extended thing, and that's matter in space and time. And he says these two are radically different. There's nothing that comes in the concept of the res cogitans that is also in the res extensa, and vice versa. They are completely separate. And he does say, in daily life that doesn't apply, but in philosophy that is a real distinction. And a lot of the critique of modern thought is a critique of that image, of this dualism of substances. But, and this has led to a lot of the criticisms of modern thought, even already in German idealism, but also later on. Certainly in the 20th century, you mentioned Merleau-Ponty, which is a kind of
Brings back.
Reuniting says you cannot understand the cogito apart from the body. It's a return to Aristotle in many ways. The soul is the form of the body. Yeah? Anima est forma corporis. And whereas Plato is, of course, Descartes' precursor, because Plato says the soul is incarcerated in the body. It fell into it, incarnation, and it has to get out of it again. Yeah? And that seems that is what Descartes says as well. But I want to say that actually there is something else going on, and that this Platonic Cartesian tradition is an example of a kind of this evacuation, of this emptying that we've spoken about. So Descartes has written his Meditations on First Philosophy, in which he presents this idea of the cogito, I think, therefore I am. And later on he rewrote it in a more systematic way in a treatise called The Principles of Philosophy, Principia Philosophiae, which was published in 1644. And there we have principle number 7. It is not possible for us to doubt that we exist while we are doubting. And this is the first thing we come to know when we philosophize in an orderly way. And then the explanation. In rejecting and even imagining to be false everything which we can in any way doubt, it is easy for us to suppose that there is no God and no heaven, and that there are no bodies, and even that we ourselves have no hands or feet, or indeed any body at all. But we cannot for all that suppose that we who are having such thoughts are nothing. For it is a contradiction to suppose that what thinks does not, at the very time when it is thinking, exist. Accordingly, this piece of knowledge, I am thinking, therefore I exist, is the first and most certain of all to occur to anyone who philosophizes in an orderly way. Yeah? In an orderly way. Now, okay, first orderly. What does that mean?
Non-saved. Not disturbed.
Not disturbed.
Yes, I don't know if this.
For him, it is a reference to the scholastic tradition. And the scholastic tradition is an Aristotelian tradition. And they speak about philosophizing in an orderly way. Locke says this somewhere in the Principle of Hope. How philosophers are like housewives, they want to put everything in its own place and keep it there. Yeah? And he says that's already half the work of philosophy done. And that's an Aristotelian remark. And the philosopher has to show where everything belongs. Yeah? And that's in itself, but on our principle, that is itself a form of homesickness. Yeah? So the homesickness presenting itself as homemaking, if you want to put it like that. Yeah? This is a radical inversion of the Aristotelian idea of order that's going on in these few lines. Descartes says, so Aristotle says, philosophizing in an orderly way means beginning with what is obvious. And what is obvious is what we experience. So when Aristotle starts to write about human beings, the soul, he talks about who we are, what our bodies, etc. We are part of nature, we're a bit like plants, a bit like animals, we've got something in ourselves as well. And so we get this whole discourse. Yeah? Descartes turns it around. He says philosophizing in an orderly way means forgetting about everything that is out there in the world of experience, turning inward, as it were, and there finding something that is the real starting point, because it is absolutely true and reliable and could not be any other way. So what he is saying here is we have to retreat from normality. We have to retreat from what is obvious, or what seems obvious, and if we do that, we find not in the world, but within ourselves, we find the basis of who we are and also of our knowledge. So it's strange. He says, because this is the basis for Descartes being able to do physics. Descartes thought that philosophy was a preparation for being able to do physics. And physics was a preparation for medicine. The goal of all of this was ultimately to make sure that we would not become sick and did not have to die. And that was how we saw this. We have to withdraw from the world in order to see it in the right way and be able to do physics. Otherwise, we end up in naturalism, or we end up in... And so far from it being the case that he affirms a kind of dual substance, he uses these words, but a kind of simplistic dual substance image. No, what he says is we have to look for this place where we are in the world, but not of the world. We have to look for this place where we are, as it were, where we are already perfect in ourselves. There is something, the perfection doesn't lie in the outside world, or it's something we can observe there, but lies within. That's where we find the real measure and standard of our knowledge, also of the outside world. And that is thinking orderly. We don't have to think orderly. That's also what is in this quote. He says, if you want to think orderly, then that's where you have to start. But he doesn't say everybody has to do that. He doesn't tell us that we all have to be philosophers. Yeah? But if we are, then we need to perform this movement of evacuation. Just as in Plato, we get the same thing, that you have to learn to see the soul as that which does not belong here, but comes from somewhere else. so it is here in a much more modern epistemological light. There is a kind of opening up. There is an opening up of something that does not belong to the world, and that is existence. And so, in a way, what Descartes is approaching here is this emptiness, is this emptying. Hi. Yeah. I wanted to show you that, or I wanted to indicate that as a way of saying this notion of the subject, this modern notion of the subject, of the cogito, is actually something that we have got to be very, very precious about. So that's going to be important when we read texts. And it's an example of a kind of homesickness in a different way. Okay, so I'm going to stop now. We'll take a break for 5 minutes, and then we go to the next one. Yeah? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
Is that recording?
Yeah. It's going to be on.
So when we talk here,
Yeah.
we don't cut this.
No, I hope that's okay with everyone.
I've probably been taking up most of the
Yeah.
while you were over there.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I think and the sound is more important.
So everyone who wants to listen to this will have to listen to me.
You talk about the philosophy and poetry, it's reminding me of haiku.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get the same thing there, don't you? Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Very simple sentence, because sometimes language can't express it.
Yeah.
And in Buddhism, especially Zen Buddhist, there's famous giant monsters who can't read, but they become enlightened. It's because language, they refer to the real thing out there. It's like a woman. Language like a finger, or the text of the media's finger. Most people start with fingers and forget when they look at the woman. They say, John, look at the woman. And most people look at the finger, forget to look at the woman. It's this kind of metaphor. And so the Zen always use very strange ways to use language. What is empty? They say, look at that tree. You know?
Yeah.
It's broke up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I read something about it the other day.
Univocalness.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, these Zen koans, they work in the same way. They set up a situation where you cannot answer. Yeah. You create a double mind. So if you answer one thing, it's wrong, if you answer the other thing, it's also wrong. And that should lead you to get out of it.
And when you talk about the dialectic, it's like I practice teaching. It's the same thing because it's two force.
Yeah.
Two force. You always have to balance two. It's inherent.
Wonderful, yeah.
I'm quite familiar with what you're talking about. Maybe you're not familiar with the philosophy itself, but the ideas, I get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Good. Yeah, great. Yeah. Yeah, I think this connection between body and mind that's very interesting about Tai Chi. It's a really philosophical thing to do. Yeah.
Just practice with you in my career.
Yeah. How long are you here for in Bristol?
Well, this is my first year. I think I will not my PhD work.
Okay. So you'll be here for a while. Yeah.
And next week, next seminar, I have class, but I really want to escape the coming. Let me check if I can.
Yeah, if you can, then do it. If you have to miss a session.
I really want to.
Yeah.
Yes. Doesn't exactly how it works. We haven't arrived.
Yes, and this one as well. I think the first chapter is responding to what you talked about how to classify things.
Yeah.
Because the vocabulary is the way that can be spoken. It's not consonant where the name that can be named is not consonant name. It's that idea, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. And the great thing about it is that it doesn't say one or the other. It says there is one. If you do not desire, then you see the one. If you do desire, then you see the many. But it's not. It doesn't say one is better than the other.
Yes.
So I think it's different from Buddhism. There is kind of there's more of a. So he gives a place to the world of desire and the world of the many, of 10,000
Buddhists
things.
not.
And the Buddhists don't give that too much. They,
Yes, I practice those.
yeah.
And I realized Taoism can make you live in this world stress with tactic, but Buddhist nature.
Yes. I see that. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Is there any big guy that did the translations into German? Was he part of any circles? Or did he?
Did I do that?
Yeah.
Well, he was, so he had been schooled in German idealism.
Oh.
But he was a member of one of the Lutheran mission congregations. And he went to China as a Lutheran missionary and spent many years there, and then found these words and started to translate them, and later regretted the fact that he had been a missionary.
Right.
But used to add to that he was lucky that he didn't manage to convert one Chinese to Christianity. He counted himself lucky about being a complete failure. But that's how. And then he spent many years there. And then when he came back from China in the 1920s, I think, or so, he lived for about 10 years and he translated almost all the classics.
Right.
He also translated the I Ching, and he was a friend of Jung.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting person. So, how are we with German? When we go on, so usually I'm providing these translations, and that's important for you. It's important. Your German is good, isn't it?
It's getting better and better, and
Yeah.
I mean at least I can read quite a lot,
Yeah.
but fluency.
I'll try to get German translations all the time, but I'm not sure that we'll always be able to do that. But if not, then we'll just
It's quite good to do it ourselves. So
Yeah, exactly. That's what I
it's
want.
just a subgroup.
Exactly. But for example, the Frankfurter Plan, which I've put in this handout, which is this Hölderlin's text, the Tortoise and Empedocles, has quite a history. There are various versions of the play. Some of them have been translated, or I think maybe all of them have been translated in the Matsuri series, that book that you mentioned. But it doesn't have the Frankfurter Plan, does it? Or does it? I don't think so. This is a text from 1797, which is, maybe you can check, yeah, which is a kind of description of the play. It's not the play itself, it's kind of description of the play that is found on Holland's paper, so it's one of the earliest versions of it. And it indicates to the full extent how he had envisaged it, because all the other versions that are extant of the text are always, they always break off at a certain point. But it is in it. Okay, then we don't have to translate it. Great. Because and is that whole book online? It's one of them. Is it? Yeah. It would be good if we could write that down so that people can look at that. The Death of Empedocles, invented translation by, so it's the State University of New York Press, 2008, translation by Krell, K-R-E-L, and that has the Frankfurt Plan in it. Yeah. Okay, that's great. And is it online? Is this on script or something? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you can just download that translation. That's great. Sorry, I didn't realize that. So what I want, we'll discuss that next time. What I would like to do next time is to look at this Frankfurter Plan and to read it, and I will provide some information on Empedocles himself as well. There are already some fragments here in the handout. And that's the first design of the play. When he wrote that, around the same time, Hölderlin wrote this ode, Empedocles, which I put in the handout behind the Frankfurter Plan. And I would like to read that, and we can translate it as we go along. And this is in this typical ode style that Empedocles uses a lot, with the indented verse lines. So let's maybe I'll read it out.
The Hölderlin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is Hölderlin. Yeah, not it. Yeah, this is Hölderlin. Yes, of course. Yeah, this is Hölderlin. Around 1797. Das Leben suchst du und es quillt und glänzt, ein göttlich Feuer, tief aus der Erde dir. Und du in schauderndem Verlangen wirst dich hinab in das Ätnaflammen. So schnellst im Weine perlen der Übermut der Königin. Und mochte sie doch, hättest du nur deinen Reichtum nicht, o Dichter, in den gärenden Kelch geopfert. Doch heilig bist du mir, wie der Erde Macht, die dich hinwegnahm, kühner getötet hat. Und folgen möchte ich in die Tiefe, hielt die Liebe mich nicht, dem Helden. Can you do a translation?
No.
No?
Not spontaneous.
Not spontaneous. You're looking for life. You're looking, and it wells up and shines, and a divine fire wells up and shines from the depths of the earth, shines on you, and you, in schauderndem Verlangen, in a trembling desire or yearning, throw yourself down into the flames of Etna. And then this is a complex simile. So schmelzt im Weine Perlen der Übermut der Königin. In this way, the pearls of hubris, Übermut, melted in the wine of the queen. This is a story that also comes back in other poems and in other.
There is some sort of translation.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, good.
No.
Thus the queen melts the, oh, read it out, it's good. You seek life, you search, and out of the earth, yeah, it's a bit different, flows and blazes forth with godly fire to you. And you, in shuddering exaction, cast yourself down into Atmos flames. Thus the queen melts the pearls of her haughtiness in wine. Let them melt. If only as a bit, if only you had not sacrificed your riches or poet in the seething chalice. Yet you are holy to me, as is the power of earth that swept you away, bold victim. And gladly would I follow into the depths, if love did not hold me back, this hero. Yeah. So there is this story that Queen Cleopatra was boasting about to Antony, was it? Or was her?
Anthony, yes.
Antony, yeah. How much that she could spend 10,000, whatever the currency was at the time, yeah, 10,000 drachma or whatever, on one evening at dinner, and Antony took up the bet, and then she took pearls, very expensive pearls, which she threw in a cup with acidic wine, melted, and then she drank that. And that's an image that for some reason was very dear to Empedocles, but to Owen, because we find it in several places that he refers to it. And here he uses it as a metaphor for this becoming one with nature that goes on in the story of Empedocles. And she, I wish she what is it in English again? Mochten sie doch let them melt, if only you would not have sacrificed your riches in the seething chalice of poet. So that's the explanation of that. Okay, so let's look at the poem. Yeah? Who wants to say something about it?
Well, just on what you were just talking about, Johan, it really makes me think of the statues in Pompeii and that strangeness of the body decomposing and leaving this trace. There's no body left, but then the plastic can be inserted to reveal that which has been disintegrated.
Yeah.
It's a similar image, I suppose.
Yeah, there
Same with the sandal was this.
Yeah, the sandal is also is like a cast of the foot. Yeah. So there is that not, that something is what it is not. Right? Understanding something from what it is, its surrounding, the space that it encloses, as a formable positioning. Yeah.
I don't understand the second third lines. Is he regretting that the poet has offers himself up?
What do you think? Yeah.
Well, it seems to be a contradiction almost, doesn't it? Because he's saying it's a good thing to do, you'd like to follow it, and then he says he shouldn't do it
Exactly.
in the second verse, so he can't really make his mind up.
That is what it says, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's a regret, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah, he says, oh, I wish you hadn't done that.
Yeah, and you had to show that.
Rather that Cleopatra sacrifices her pearls, which is, what sort of an act is that?
Because it's not her lethal sort of abnegating her selfhood in nature, it's the other way around almost.
It's the other way around, yeah, exactly.
She's the chalice in which nature and the subject mix, or whatever it is. But you have the same sort of inversion in the first stanza in a way, because the first two lines are you know, the flames or the magma sort of coming up to meet you and shining on you. And then the second two lines are you going down into the crater.
Exactly.
But they're both, they're sort of both happening at the same time.
They're happening at the same time, and in the first line you get this repetition. I think to reinforce that. Das Leben suchst du suchst und das quillt und glänzt. There's almost a form of assonance there. So the repetition of the searching, the seeking, you're seeking life, you're seeking, and it wells up and shines. The fire wells up and shines, as quillt and glänzt. There's that movement of looking and something coming towards.
So what is coming towards him is life, you know, rather than death, whereas it isn't death that he's actually going to experience. As presumably, to answer my own question from before, what he's regretting is the loss of his Reichtum, of his riches, presumably then of his words and thinking. Whereas what he's moved towards then is life, in fact, in embracing death. So it is, he's welcoming, that process of embracing death is welcome, but it's regretful there's no process you have to sacrifice something which is less important, presumably, which is like the pearls of Cleopatra.
Yeah.
That
So what is sacrificed
is the Reichtum, is presumably then his thinking, his earthly life, his earthly existence.
What is, yeah, go on.
In the third line, is schaudernd ambiguous? Is that a good thing or a bad thing when he says schaudernd und line?
Yeah, it's yeah.
I mean, it could be interpreted either way, really, couldn't it? It's a very, you know,
Yeah.
bizarre and longing, or it may be slightly shuddering back if it's a good idea or not. But which way does he shudder?
Shuddering can be the trembling in front of the history. But
Yes, it could be trembling. It could be a sort of like a vision, you know.
But it can also be horror.
It could be horror,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. But I don't know if we're meant to think it's ambiguous or if we're meant to interpret it in one way. I don't know.
So what is this? How do we understand this? Even just the first stanza, he's looking for life, and he kills himself in some sort of longing. And Empedocles, the title of the poem, indicates that we're talking here about a philosopher.
Seems to me it's sort of positive because the fire is göttlich, isn't it? And you're seeking das Leben. And quillt and glänzt are quite positive sort of verbs, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then is there a bit of doubt with the schaudert, or is it all part of sort of St. Teresa type ecstasy?
Yeah, exactly. And it reads like that. The stanza reads like that, and I think the way that the verses are set sort of also...
Yeah, the accident.
It's that kind of falling down.
Falling down, yes.
Das Leben
Visually
suchst.
almost.
Yeah, it's like that. Das Leben suchst und es quillt und glänzt ein göttlich Feuer tief aus der Erde dir, und du in Schaudern und Verlangen wirfst dich hinab in das Ätna flammen. At the end he is
You're seeking truth, life,
in the prosody.
enlightenment.
He is looking for life, and a divine fire consumes him. But I think, Jeremy, what you said, it's a double movement. The fire comes towards the philosopher, and he throws himself into it. It is like a mutual embrace. A temptation, you think? Yeah.
But he throws himself in because he wants to meet life head on, not because he's despairing or he really wants to die,
Yeah.
because he wants too much life.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So there is something about this too much. And
So maybe that excess is negative.
And we see that coming back next time when we look at the Frankfurter Plan. That's also how Hölderlin begins to describe Empedocles' situation. That whatever finite manifestation of life he finds, it's not enough. Whatever person he finds to love, it's not enough. It's got to be, yeah.
What do Quillen und Glanzen, what do they mean?
Quillen.
Quillen, it's not Quillen, Quillen, I think.
Yeah.
It's a funny word.
It's to how does he translate it? Flows and blazes forth a godly fire. Yeah, that's not what it says.
It means sort of wells up, welling up.
Yeah, quelling up, but to well up.
The source.
Related to Quella.
Is that like Quella?
Yeah,
It's very related to Quella,
yeah.
No.
It's just a, yeah.
Creed.
So it's to well up, like a spring, and to shine.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Can't definitely shine.
And to say of a fire that it's glensant is not the same as to say of a fire that it's shining is a bit misleading. And glensant is what gold does. Shimmering. Glimmering.
Yeah.
It stars glint. Stars twinkle.
Stars twinkle, yeah, that's what it is. It's like it's bling, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think there's something to do with knowledge there? Glance, like sort of knowledge, no. Enlightenment.
Gold as a so the original, I think.
Or it's alchemy or something.
The core meaning, yes, alchemy, exactly. The core meaning of, or the core association of glancent, what is gold. And gold is, of course, in alchemy is a very important symbol in that sense. And it also, the shining, this glancent is something that is almost supernatural, or not of this world. It's the light that lies on things and makes things visible, but that is not that's not the world itself. But it comes from deep out of the earth. Deep aus der Erde. So it doesn't come from heaven, but it's ein göttlich Feuer. It's a heavenly, it's a divine fire, but it doesn't come from heaven. It comes from below.
Is there much theological symbolism in Hölderlin? I mean, is there a sort of Machinnian sort of hell and heaven element going on here? I mean, is this fire is this a sort of allegory of Kronos or something like that?
You mean of hell? Or,
Yeah.
I don't think there's a Manichaean trait, but I'm not sure if that's something we would have to look into. There's definitely a kind of theological substructure in Hölderlin, even if only because of his training as a theologian. Because he was going to be a theologian. But I don't know. I mean, why would you say that this is a kind of hellish place?
Well, but it didn't occur to me until you said that this is a divine force that's not from heaven. It's from below.
But I think, yeah, that's right. But my thought was, this is the nature becomes a divine force.
Coming back to glens and this association with gold and all that glisters is not gold type thing, do you think there's an element of sort of entrapment that it may be actually artificial? It may be it's too glinsome, too attractive, and he's too easily tempted. And it's swelling forward and it's totally, I mean, it's all very Sturm und Drang almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
To me, it's the same image as the end of Tristan.
Well, perhaps the end of Götterdämmerung.
Yeah.
And in fact, Götterdämmerung was the whole spectacular imagery of the ending to that was modelled on French grand opera, which revelled in these phantasmagoric spectacles of construction. Yeah, and of the sort of the sacrifice of someone who, I think in its La Muette de Pottici, to the Nobel opera, she actually jumps into a crater, into a volcano. It's in the 1830s. But
yeah, that's the same in Götterdämmerung. She jumps into the fire.
Exactly, and Wagner directly modelled it on these French operas, which have the individual sort of being a sacrifice to the community, and you have these enormous sort of crowds on stage as well, with a big set design as well.
Yeah.
So it's
It is theatrical. It's a big theatrical.
So what you were saying about Glänzt being a kind of illusory is definitely what attracted Wagner.
Yeah.
For Herderman it might be a different case.
But not saying that there isn't a truth there, but it may not be as straightforward.
Well, and of course, the eruption of the volcano is this moment when the single sacrifice of a single individual is kind of like universalized. It like spreads. It's like not a contained abyss that you can individually fall into.
That's right. Here it is a purely individual relationship because it's not a sacrifice in any way. Well, if it is, it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice in order to find life. The philosopher sacrifices some form of individual life in order to find a bigger life. Maybe. Huh?
Do you think he find it, just want to last it, then he died?
In a moment he found it and then he died.
Then the moment he found it, he don't want to live things live away.
Yeah, the moment he finds it, he dies.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't understand this comparison to Queen Cleopatra, though, because she's arrogant. It was this Übermut. Does that apply? Is he saying that applies to Empedocles? Or is Queen Cleopatra allowed to it? Macht sie doch. I don't quite understand this bit with Cleopatra, I'm honest.
So the first word is so. Like this. So the situation that we have of Empedocles jumping in Manhattan is like, and that leads maybe into the direction of saying there's a critique of Empedocles, übermütige Tat. This is what Cleopatra did, he says, when she took what was most precious and dissolved it and then drank it.
Okay, so he's saying Cleopatra can do that because she's not actually that important, whereas Empedocles should not really do it.
Go
He's a
ahead.
philosopher.
He says, go ahead.
Go ahead,
What
yeah.
does he do?
Yeah,
Whatever.
she can do it, but who cares about that?
Yeah.
But the force of Macht sie doch is what that she was pleased to do that. How do we understand of Macht sie doch?
Yeah,
She was not sad to lose the powers.
Yeah.
She was positive.
Yeah.
Yes, she's affirming. It's affirming that.
yeah. But yeah, that's right. Do you think you can read it in this way? Mochte sie doch in the sense of, and she did it because she wanted to do it,
Yeah.
or well, go ahead and it's okay for her to go ahead and do it. Let her get on with it. How does he translate it?
Yeah, that's a good sense. Let her do it if she wants to do it. That's fine. Basically saying that's fine. Macht sie doch. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. But you can read it like you can read it like you suggest.
Yeah.
It's something she wanted to do.
Yeah, she wanted to do it.
Yeah, she did it because she wanted to do it.
Because in German as well, you can talk about pearls of wisdom, can't you?
Yes. Yeah.
So that because it's quite incredible. It's an image in a way, because his own body is going to dissolve in the lava, isn't it? And it's, there must be something. So there's all of that, but therefore I think that it is what he's giving up is just as Cleopatra sacrificed her pearls, he has sacrificed something else. You know, and she's done it to win a bet. He's also placing a rather big bet here that he's going to get real life rather than the partial life that he's had today.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I think maybe he's saying that Cleopatra's attempts to perform the same move, but in the sense it's kind of like a materialism of the poet who like sacrifices his whole body and then becomes one with nature, rather than just like a part of nature becomes part of her.
Yeah, there's a big contrast. She ends up drinking.
Yeah.
And the
As if her throat is the crater.
As if her throat. Exactly.
As if he's jumping in her
He's
throat.
jumping in her throat.
Her right is to however much these pearls are worth, is, they're worth a knife.
So the consumption of a part of nature rather than subsumption within the whole.
But it does seem, if you then ask the question, so what is the rich? What is the rich? What are the riches of the poet? That must then be his life.
His life, yeah, that's how I understand it, yeah. Does that equate in any way to Cleopatra's pearls?
Certainly not in the same way.
Not in the same way.
No, pearls,
No.
that's just possession.
Material
it's a
possession,
material
yeah.
thing. But the life of the poet is that which makes him into a poet, or in this case, so the poet is even called, the philosopher is called a poet.
In which case, why does he compare it to comparatively such a trivial act?
Yeah, exactly. Because the way this act is, this is a trivial act of wanton destructiveness almost.
Yeah.
So we could say at the end of this stanza, he's not too happy with what Empedocles
No,
has
I
done.
think he's actually quite damning of what
He's quite damning.
that's done.
In line with what we said earlier about these philosophical ideas on suicide, that suicide is not a way to reunite with God,
No,
as it were. Yeah? Something like that, maybe.
it's quite an insulting, whatever, it's not called a simile comparison, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not similar, is it? Well, yeah, it's maybe it's extended simile.
Extended simile.
Analogy.
Banality. Did you say banality?
No, analogy.
It's like Milton's ones, whatever they were.
But then he goes on and he says, and yet, doch heilig bist du mir, but you are sacred to me. Like, and then it's a very strange twist, like the earthly power that took you away, brave, killed.
It says bold victim.
Bold victim, yeah. Kühn, yeah, bold or brave. Bold is better, yeah. Bold and getöteter means one who has been killed. Yeah? So it's not the poet himself who jumps into the crater, but it's the force of nature, the fire that takes him away.
Yeah, but I read that as affirmation of the poet because he's becoming part of this earthly power.
Yeah, that's why he says despite all of this, you are sacred.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, despite it's because of.
You can still think someone does a stupid thing, but yet admire them, can't you?
Yeah, that's right. Of course, yes. Yeah. Yeah. So what he Kühner getöteter, he says this is a cool act. And I would like to follow you.
He's not dismissing the Göttlich fire or the Quillen and the Glens or anything like
So
that.
remind me of the artist Leap in the Void.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like a performance.
Here it becomes a leap in the void. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Which is called depth here, but it's the same idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just remind me.
Is there a leaping in the void that's not real? Is there Is there a fake form of doing that?
He thinks he would reach it, but he's not.
Here in the poem, you think?
No, I mean the big thing for
Yeah.
I mean it's performance art.
I suppose writing a poem about it is not doing it in a way.
Yeah, so
Imagination
writing
is
the poem
addictive,
is
it's
itself, it's
addictive,
also performance,
It's a
yeah.
performance.
And it's not doing it.
And imagining it, or whatever, it's not doing it.
Yeah, if you would really do it, you would be writing a poem about it.
Versified.
Yeah. But he says, I would like to follow you into the depth if love didn't hold me back. And I would like to follow the hero. Now he calls him a hero. If love didn't call me back. What's a hero?
Back by love, the real hero. Love is real hero.
You might say it is heroic to be held back by love from reuniting with the all.
That love is what's stopping him from becoming a hero. Because he calls Empedocles a hero.
Yeah.
So Jim Milton is Empedocles, isn't it? It's Falkland Jim Milton.
Yeah. The hero is Empedocles. He says, I can't be like that.
Yeah.
So the hero is someone who's not held back by love.
Exactly, that's what it is.
Because
Sacrifices he can deliver.
So he's not been held back by his family or
Yeah.
country.
And that comes at the end in the play, where Empedocles says farewell to his wife and his children as he goes to the mountain to jump into the crater. And first he says goodbye to his students, his disciples. and then what's his Hilden says that was easy. Then he had to say farewell to his wife and children. That was more difficult. And then there's a third instance.
So it is like a householdly love, a personal love. It's not like love in the ground.
You could look at it maybe here like that. Yeah, it's the love that I have for someone or something like that.
Can we pray to hope? Can we translate this love or invite to hope? Still have hope. I don't know if I can understand in this way.
If there is hope after beyond this love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Usually we
still have hope.
I still have hope. I can give up love, but we can assume that Empedocles acted out of some kind of hope. Yeah.
Coming back to Damon Hilden, just because someone's a hero doesn't necessarily mean he or she is doing the right thing, or that we should all follow them heroes. I mean, it's coming back to Charles Blackgate, they're all heroes and stuff like that, but none of us charge into canonry.
That's why I asked the question, what is a hero?
Yes, what is a hero? Because you can still be a hero without, many heroes are really stupid.
It's a strange category because it seems to be both someone who steps outside of historical contingencies and who does something outside the expected, but also it's often attributed to people that perform the duty of.
That's right. There's a role for a hero, for someone's acting the part. For the character, someone has to be the hero.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that is the classical understanding of the hero is the one who, in an exemplary and transcendent way, manifests something that is actually a communal value.
Yeah, for me, the hero maybe not a person, maybe it's gravity.
Oh, really?
For me, maybe it's something, you jump into the volcano is something you feel very light. You get rid of your body, it's light. And there's something that's grabbed you. I call it gravity. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is kind of things here in my mind.
Yeah, and then that would be the real hero.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like unbearable lightness of being,
Yeah.
lightness or something. It's gravity, some gravity still there. I don't know.
What strikes me about this last line, hier die Liebe, mich nicht, is that die Liebe just comes out of nowhere. that there's nothing in the previous lines about Deliber. It's a completely new idea.
Yeah.
So unless possibly there is philosophical or cultural background to it, which I don't know, I mean, how are we meant to suddenly understand Deliber, which as we know is a huge sort of concept anyway. It strikes you like a sort of thunderbolt, Deliber.
Yeah.
And just out of nowhere, it seems to me. There's no lead up. There's nothing about Liber in the previous lines.
Although perhaps on and off beat, as it were, because it's
It is
sort of
suggestive.
syntactically, it's sort of not in the right place, whereas Den Helden.
Yes, that's right. It is, absolutely, it is an offbeat. It's not.
Yeah, that's right.
Deliber.
That's right.
I mean, type
As if it's just
Goethe type,
casually mentioned.
Goethe type device. But I don't know what it means, and he gives us no clue as to what it means, does he? Within just the confines of the poem.
In the confines of the poem, the only thing maybe you can say is that it contrasts with Leben in the first line.
Okay.
Leben and Leben.
And possibly Verlangen as well, isn't it?
Verlangen, yeah. No,
Possibly also with Cleopatra there, perhaps, as well.
Yeah, so the story of Cleopatra
Yeah, the story of love.
immediately is a story of love.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true, Antony.
Why does she do the pearl thing? I didn't catch that. Because she wants to become, she wants to
No,
like
she
embody
wants-
the
No,
love.
no. It's the way I understood it from reading about it was that it was just a kind of show off.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
She wanted to just impress.
She doesn't need them, so she would do them.
Yeah, she wanted so she had said I can spend so many thousands of pounds on a dinner, and then her bluff was called, and then so because I think then Anthony said you could possibly eat so much that would cost all of that money, and then she dissolved these pearls. That's the story. But you're right. I think somehow the poet himself puts himself more in that position, in a way. Yeah. He's saying I'm more like Cleopatra.
But is Deliber for someone or for life or? I don't know.
Well, in terms of of course in a poem that's called Empedocles, we have to think immediately of what Empedocles says about love. So yeah, it's time to stop. It's 6:10. We can do that next time. There are these fragments by Empedocles where love comes in already here. So let's do that because I think it's a useful discussion. I hope you feel the same way. And then I want to look at the Frankfurter Plan. So if you could all prepare that, read it, and then we can discuss it. The German text is in this handout, and the translation is available in that book. Maybe you can send us a link.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They also noticed
Oh,
there's
that
a
would be
film
great.
play. Have you seen that? 1987.
Yeah, there is a film. I want to make sure that we watch
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, there is in 1999 the play was filmed, or a film was made of it. Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Good. Okay, good. I hope you all enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I did.
Thank you very much.
Okay. See you then in 2 weeks' time. Yeah?